The year is 216 BCE. The Roman Republic is at the height of its power, but a storm is brewing. This storm has a name: Hannibal Barca. He's a Carthaginian general who's about to deliver a blow so devastating, it will echo through the ages. We're talking about the Battle of Cannae. Picture this: a hot August day in southern Italy. Two massive armies face each other. On one side, the mighty Roman legions. They're confident, outnumbering their enemy. On the other, Hannibal's diverse force of Carthaginians, Gauls, and Spaniards. The stage is set for one of the most brilliant tactical maneuvers ever executed. It's a day that will see rivers of blood flow and change the course of the ancient world. The Battle of Cannae isn't just a footnote in history books, it's a masterclass in strategy and tactics. Military academies still study it today. Why? Because it shows how a smaller, seemingly weaker force can utterly destroy a larger one. So let's step back in time and witness a moment that changed history forever. Hannibal Barca wasn't your average general. He was a tactical genius, born into a family of warriors. His father, Hamilcar, had fought against Rome in the First Punic War. Legend has it that as a boy, Hannibal swore an oath to his father. He vowed to forever be an enemy of Rome, and boy did he keep that promise. By 218 BCE, Hannibal was ready to strike at the heart of Roman power. But there was a small problem: the Alps. Most people would see these mountains as an insurmountable obstacle. Not Hannibal. He saw them as a challenge to overcome, and overcome them he did. With an army of 50,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants, he crossed the Alps. It was a feat that caught Rome completely off guard. This wasn't just a military campaign, it was a logistical miracle. Imagine the planning required to move such a large, diverse force through hostile territory. Hannibal had to feed his men, care for his animals, and maintain morale. By the time Hannibal reached Italy, he had already proven himself a formidable opponent. Cannae would be his masterpiece, cementing his place in history as one of the greatest military minds of all time. Rome was in a state of panic. Hannibal was on their doorstep. He had crossed the Alps, something they thought impossible. Now he was rampaging through Italy, defeating every army sent against him. The Roman Senate knew they had to act decisively. They decided to raise the largest army in Roman history. This wasn't just about defeating Hannibal, it was about crushing him completely. The Romans appointed two consuls to lead this massive force: Gaius Terentius Varro and Lucius Aemilius Paulus. Varro was a populist, eager for glory. Paulus was more cautious, a seasoned military man. Together they were given command of 8 legions. That's about 80,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry. It was an enormous army by ancient standards. The Romans were confident that with such overwhelming numbers, victory was assured. But numbers aren't everything in war. The Roman army had its strengths, sure. Their heavy infantry was renowned for its discipline and fighting prowess. However, the Romans had a critical weakness: their command structure. This conflict at the top would prove disastrous when facing a unified enemy led by a tactical genius like Hannibal. The stage for this epic confrontation was set at Cannae, a small town in southern Italy. It was August 2nd, 216 BCE. The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty plain. To the south flowed the Aufidus River, providing the only relief from the scorching heat. This wasn't just any piece of land. Hannibal had chosen it carefully. He knew the terrain would play a crucial role in his plan. Imagine standing there, looking out over the battlefield. To the north, you'd see gently rolling hills. To the south, the glint of sunlight on the river, and in between, a wide open plain, perfect for large-scale maneuvers. Hannibal positioned his army with its back to the river. It might seem like a risky move, cutting off a potential escape route, but Hannibal wasn't thinking about escape. He was thinking about victory. The Roman army, under Varro's command that day, took up position opposite Hannibal. They formed up in their traditional formation, a deep, densely packed rectangle of infantry. Little did the Romans know, they were about to face one of the most brilliant tactical maneuvers in military history. Hannibal's plan at Cannae was nothing short of brilliant. He understood something fundamental about warfare. It's not just about strength, but about using that strength effectively. His formation might have looked weak to the Romans, but it was designed with a specific purpose in mind. The center was intentionally thin, manned by his Gallic and Spanish infantry. These were fierce fighters, but not as well equipped as the Romans. On the wings, Hannibal placed his veteran Libyan infantry. These were his best troops, hardened by years of fighting, but he didn't put them in the front line. Instead, he held them back, hidden from Roman view. His cavalry, a mix of Numidian light horse and heavier Gallic and Spanish riders, was positioned on the far flanks. The key to Hannibal's plan was flexibility. He knew the Romans would push hard against his center. That was their standard tactic, use their superior numbers to overwhelm the enemy. But Hannibal turned this strength into a weakness. As the Romans advanced, his center would gradually fall back. But it wouldn't break. It would bend, like a bow being drawn. This gradual retreat would draw the Romans in, creating a bulge in their line. As they advanced, their flanks would be exposed, setting the stage for Hannibal's decisive strike. The battle began with a clash of cavalry on the flanks. Hannibal's horsemen, though outnumbered, fought with fierce determination. They knew their role was crucial. On the Roman right, the heavy cavalry was pushed back and scattered. On the left, the Numidian light horse engaged in a swirling, chaotic melee with the Roman allied cavalry. It was a confusing, dusty affair, but slowly, surely, Hannibal's riders gained the upper hand. Meanwhile, in the center, the main infantry lines met with a thunderous crash. The Roman legionaries pushed forward, their tight formation like a battering ram. They slammed into Hannibal's Gallic and Spanish troops. At first it seemed like the Roman tactic was working. Hannibal's line began to bend backward. Varro, watching from his position, must have felt a surge of confidence. His plan was working, or so he thought. But this was exactly what Hannibal wanted. As the Romans pushed deeper into his formation, their line began to thin. They were so focused on breaking through, they didn't notice what was happening on their flanks. That's when Hannibal sprung his trap. His Libyan infantry, hidden until now, suddenly swung around. They slammed into the exposed Roman flanks, turning the tide of battle. The scale of Rome's defeat at Cannae was staggering. Out of their army of 86,000, an estimated 50,000 to 70,000 Romans were killed. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was a national catastrophe. Imagine the impact. In a single day, Rome lost more men than the United States did in the entire Vietnam War. The flower of Roman youth, including 80 senators, lay dead on the field of Cannae. Hannibal's victory was total. He had lost only about 6,000 men, mostly from his Gallic infantry who bore the brunt of the initial Roman assault. The Roman army was not just defeated, it was annihilated. Varro, the consul who had pushed for this battle, managed to escape with a small cavalry detachment. His co-consul, Paulus, wasn't so lucky. He died on the field, along with both consuls from the previous year. The impact on Rome was immediate and profound. When news of the disaster reached the city, panic set in. People thronged the streets, wailing in grief. The Senate met in emergency session. There were fears that Hannibal would march on Rome itself. In this moment of crisis, the Romans showed their true mettle. Instead of surrendering, they rallied. Rome had been knocked down, but not out. The Battle of Cannae sent shockwaves through the ancient world. Rome, the rising power of the Mediterranean, had been humbled. Many of Rome's allies, seeing which way the wind was blowing, switched sides to join Hannibal. The city of Capua, Rome's ally and the second largest city in Italy, opened its gates to the Carthaginian general. It seemed like Rome's dominance was coming to an end, but Rome refused to accept defeat. In a move that would become legendary, the Senate voted to buy back the land on which Hannibal's army was camped, at full price. This wasn't just a financial decision, it was a powerful statement of intent. Rome was saying, we may be down, but we're not out. We will recover this land. This stubborn refusal to give up would become a hallmark of Roman character. The Romans also made significant changes to their military strategy. They realized that facing Hannibal in open battle was suicide. Instead, they adopted a policy of attrition. Roman generals like Fabius Maximus, nicknamed the Delayer, avoided direct confrontation. They harassed Hannibal's supply lines, attacked his allies, and slowly wore down his army. Rome's resilience would eventually lead to the downfall of Carthage. The Battle of Cannae wasn't just a clash of armies. It was a collision of cultures, technologies, and personalities. Let's dive into some fascinating details that often get overlooked. For instance, did you know that Hannibal's army was incredibly diverse? He commanded Carthaginians, Numidians, Gauls, Spaniards, and even some Greeks. It was like an ancient world United Nations, all united under one brilliant commander. Then there's the matter of Hannibal's famous war elephants. While they played a crucial role in his crossing of the Alps, they weren't a factor at Cannae. By the time of the battle, Hannibal had only one elephant left. This lone elephant, named Surus, the Syrian, was reportedly Hannibal's favorite mount. Imagine the sight of this great general directing the battle from atop his last remaining war beast.